Hello, this is Cotton Stoops and welcome back to another Lumion Legacy HTUC video, and today's video is on one of the newest Lumions of the Halloween event of 2022, Halvantic. Halvantic is pretty promising, so let's talk about it. From counters and checks and his teammates, as well as the roles and sets Halvantic can use, and of course the weaknesses and resistances, this video will teach you how to use and counter Halvantic. The first thing that you should know about Halvantic is the role that Halvantic plays, and we can answer this with its base stats. Its base stats are pretty simple because its range attack and range defense are all pretty bad. 26 range attack, never use it, and its range defense of 60 is on par with other range defense Lumions like Ventation, and of course that is pretty low. However, you do have some decent melee defense and a decent speed tier. This speed tier actually lets you be in the same speed tier as the Eclipses, Zeppelins, C.B.Os, and this lets you outspeed stuff like Valkyries, and almost outspeeds the newly buffed Ikizune. And the 71 melee defense is not really the best, but it is on par with some offensive Lumions, so yeah. And the best things, its energy, HP, and melee attack are all really high. Its energy of 95 is actually pretty great. It lets Halvantic use a lot of strong moves, and 130 melee attack is on par with one of the most highest damaging melee attacks in the game. And unlike some others, this can actually be rallied, so it's going to be hitting harder. And its HP stat of 123 is actually pretty high, and it kind of alleviates that weakness of having very low defenses. So, what role does Halvantic play? Well, it can be a very strong, decently fast wallbreaker, and most of the time it has potential to set up, but it's not always going to be doing this, so you want to pair Halvantic up with a lot of pivots, specifically maybe like Snack, Luminami, and of course Phasionaut, so it doesn't really have to rely on its bulk too much and just focus on doing damage. With that out of the way, let's talk about its weaknesses and resistances. Halvantic's typing is toxic and electric, so it has a few weaknesses and resistances. Its two weaknesses is to water and mind. Water types like Barblast, Luminami, C.B.O are some great stuff that you should not be switching in on, and mind types like Ferroglyph, Shachi, Metronet, and some other stuff as well. You should be watching out for those, and I guess you can include Metatoad in there as well. And of course, there's 6 resistances to Brawler, Toxic, Plant, Electric, Air, and Metal are all pretty good. Brawler types like C.B.O and Wrestling, Toxic types like other Halvantics, Barblast, and Venilins, Plant types like Totem, Electric types like Zulong and Joltooth, as well as electric type move users like Halvantic and Protagon, air types like Zeppelin, Wintrix, Stratosaur, and metal types like Valkyrie, Stratosaur, Tyrex are some great stuff you can switch in on. However, you have one major weakness to Earth, which Borak, Cetamars, and Tyrex are great stuff to switch in on here. So the main way you should be dealing with Halvantic is Earth types, and maybe the possible revenge killing or switching in with the water or mud types. With that out of the way, let's talk about Halvantic sets. The wallbreaker set for Halvantic is pretty simple. The ability 1 is Pitch Black or Aggressive. Pitch Black is basically the most consistent one because it provides the most steady damage output over time. And of course, Halvantic, being a pretty frail Lumion, it's not going to be killing a lot of things unless it's super fast, so running aggressive is not generally the best thing you want. And the personality, very brawny, clumsy, tender will be your main personality. This is so we can maximize our damage output, but of course you can run brawny nimble. And Baneful Bash, Gnarly Gash, Bulk Up will be your main 3 moves, and of course you can run Thunder Crash or Primal Slash. Primal Slash is pretty good because you can try and hit Spirit types and Obsidian, so replacing it for one of the moves here is actually pretty decent. And the items of choice, your choice of shell, of course it's pretty obvious you want to hit hard with whatever move you want. Power Cuffs and Rachel Plushie are the alternatives. Generally the shells are a lot better because Halvantic's energy is not really the best to exploit Power Cuffs with, but of course you can try it out. And Rachel Plushie, it does have some good matchups against water types if you do have this Rachel Plushie, so that's pretty good. And the TPs. 0 HP, of course, is 0, and 96 energy lets you get up to 275, which lets you use 1 bulk up and 5 gnarly gashes. 200 melee attack is to maximize, 200 or rather 28 range defense is the leftovers, and 176 speed lets you outspeed a 200 speed non-nimble C.B.O. So with that out of the way, let's talk about the counters and checks as well as its teammates, so let's get along with that. Offensive counters and checks to Halvantic is pretty simple. You just want to run stuff that can either hit it super effectively or just hit it enough and switch in. Stuff like Baneki, Zulang, Deldrix, and Volkaloa can obviously deal with this pretty well. You just want to run stuff that can revenge kill it because it's pretty hard hitting. So overall, not using these guys to switch in is obviously not the best. And also do note that pretty much any fast thing that's faster than Halvantic will take it out as long as it has really good attack. So yeah, just be worried about that. And the defensive checks and counters to Halvantic is pretty simple. You just want to run stuff that can beat it in a 1v1 or resist its moves and hit it super effectively. Tyrex is probably the best one out of the bunch because Tyrex can resist most of its moves and of course hit it back with a super effective Earthquake. Barblast will be the second one, and of course Tundrelin and Obsidian will be the third. Tundrelin doesn't really do a lot, but of course it does beat it in the 1v1 I'm pretty sure. And Obsidian is of course pretty good, but once Halvantic runs Bramble Slash, Obsidian is just basically dead. However, Thunder Crash I'm pretty sure doesn't do nearly enough damage to 3 or 2 hit KO Barblast, so that's pretty good. However, with that out of the way, offensive teammates to Halvantic is pretty simple because you just want to run stuff that can take out the walls or support Halvantic. Valkyrie, Pyrelin, Mocho, Volkaloa, and Eclipse are some good examples. Volkaloa can mainly deal with pretty much all of them, they just have to be weak enough so Volkaloa can take them out with super effective hits. Valkyrie pretty much beats them all in a 1v1 scenario. Pyrelin is actually a pretty good version of Valkyrie, but it needs a little bit of setup, just not too much. It just needs some setup in front of Barblast. And Eclipse is mainly here for, supporting with its resistance of or immunities to light and dark. And Mocho, obviously, it does a really good job against most of the stuff I said earlier. And of course, defensive teammates to Halvantic, it's basically offensive teammates, except we're trying to run stuff that can help Halvantic get in the battle. Stuff like pivots like Yursnak and Lunami are especially great, and Stratosaur, Tertiki, Tyrex are some good examples of walls that you can run normally, but that doesn't mean you're limited to these guys. You can of course run a lot more Lumians. Halvantic is a pretty unique typing, so you have to be wary, but overall these guys are all pretty good. So with that out of the way, let's talk about the conclusion and my thoughts on Halvantic. So yeah. So overall, I think Halvantic is pretty decent. The main problem that I'm seeing with Halvantic is that it gets checked or walled by a lot of the common stuff. The main things I'm talking about is Barblast and Tyrex, and of course the aforementioned Tundrelin and Obsidian. While I probably didn't do my best to research into more counters and checks that Halvantic probably has, I can see some other answers probably like Phage and Eliguanids being able to pivot off of it, and other stuff like that. Does that make Halvantic bad? No. So offensive pressure is actually pretty amazing on the right team setup, mainly because it can just dish out a lot of damage and basically threaten from any nearly frail Lumian from getting in the battle. But my main problem with Halvantic is that it doesn't really fit neatly into any playstyle that's in the meta right now. For example, it doesn't really fit in Hyper Offense because it would rather want to use a lot more moves and set up, in my opinion. And of course, it doesn't really fit in Semi-Stall because there are better options in my opinion. Stuff like Zeppelin, Valkyrie, Pyrelin, and some other stuff as well. So with that out of the way, like the video if you enjoyed and subscribe if you're into these kind of videos. I do make these other videos like the HTUC Nevermare and Metronet, so go check them out if you can. And of course, I have a Discord, and remember, Zulong is still a dumpster fire.